Well, hello, my favorite people. Thank you so much for dropping by and joining me again for another exciting episode of the mini character selection project in Unreal Engine. In this episode, it's all about continuing on from the last episode in which we made basic gamepad functionality available to our menu. Let's just refresh ourselves what that was. We can now bring up the menu not just with the keyboard, but we can also do it with the gamepad. And the gamepad now selects randomly kind of the first character. It brings us a dotted line around the other characters. And if we hover over one and press the X button or the A button on the controller, we then select that character. So that's the functionality in the background, more or less there. We can also go into the night level. That's also lovely. I love going into different levels. Say hello to Unreal Guy, who's still selling hot dogs. Good stuff, Unreal Guy. Made any sales here? We can also change the skin tones with the gamepad already. We can also change outfits with the gamepad. So we've hooked all that up and made all that possible in the last episode. So what we're going to do now is when we bring up the menu, when we focus on the menu, we need to have a look and see which current skeletal mesh are we using. Like in this case, it's the policeman here, and then go and find that equivalent button and add a highlight underneath the button so that people see, hey, that's the current guy. I can now go press left. That'll highlight the next guy. And as soon as I press X, it'll then select the next guy. That's what we want to do. And I suppose also once we've done it, we would like to automatically dismiss the menu. It's kind of a different design paradigm than with the mouse. So on the mouse, I might leave the menu and then dismiss it manually. But I think on the on the gamepad, it might be better if we select the character and then the menu gets dismissed immediately. So we need to handle that case. Are we actually using a gamepad or are we not? So we'll look at all this. There's the other option. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to change this little text here that is currently saying 1 to 4 to change outfits. That is really only applicable when we're using the keyboard, but it doesn't make sense when we're using the gamepad. We need to tell people how to use this thing on the gamepad instead. So lots of exciting stuff that we need to do. Embellishments, I give you that. Not something that is super important. Yet again, it needs to be done. Otherwise, it's not perfect, which is what we strive for, perfection. So let's see how we can grab the current skeletal mesh and turn that into the correct button. That'll be a little bit challenging, but bear with me there. We know the principles already. We've done it before. And the key to success here is, of course, something like this, like the map variable. We've created that on our character. The next one we're going to create now is going to happen on the selection menu because it knows the buttons. To demonstrate what I'd like to do visually here, I'm going to go and pick the first button here. And I'm going to change the background color just so that you can see what I'm trying to do here. So just to remind you, the button is the thing that we see behind the character, and the actual image is happening on top of the button. The button itself can have several states like normal, pressed, released, currently not pressable, that sort of thing. And we can find all these things with the button selected up here in the details panel, namely under the appearance style box here. These are the button states. So we have hovered, normal, pressed, disabled. Those are the things. I can't show you the hovered state right now because I'm not hovering. The button isn't actively hovering here, but I can show you the principle and the effect by changing a property on the normal state. It has a tint. This is it. And it is the tint that we can change. So this is what our highlight button would look like, or maybe not red. We can make it, I don't know, something like blue or green or yellow or whatever we want to do. Really, we'll pick a nice color. That's what that button is going to look like if it's focused, and we'll get rid of the dotted line as well. So there we go. Let's make that happen. So for that, let's go into our graph. Stash character we don't need anymore, so I'll close that down. Let's go and create ourselves a new function that we'll call just at the bottom here under event preconstruct, where we're grabbing a reference to our Cinti character. We're going to go and run that function here just so that we set up this variable. And I'm going to call my function, if I can find it, there we go, create mesh map. That is technically what we want to do. We want to create a map variable that will have a string as a key, and as a value we want a button. Because really what I want to do is ideally on my character here in the add focus logic, rather than grabbing random button or the first button, I'd like to be able to give this function an input to say, hey, we've currently got this character, now find me the equivalent button on that, and then put that button into set keyboard focus, and that'll solve that problem already. So let's see if we can make that happen. New variable, very important. So this is just a function. Let's go create ourselves a variable. I'm going to call that mesh map. I'll call it that because it's a map of meshes. At the bottom here, that's not going to be a Boolean variable. That is going to be a string variable. Pink one here. And just like we've learned before, on the right hand side of the string variable, let's click that, get this little magic menu here, the bottom of which is a map or dictionary. Let's go click that. And that allows us to set the type of the value that we want to get out of it. String is kind of the input, and the output is going to be a button, namely one of these, like button character 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so forth. See if we can find that here. Button, object type. Awesome. There. I think this needs to be instance readable, so it's a public variable so that our character is going to look a value up there and give it back to the menu. That's how we're going to do that. So first of all, let's grab this out and set it like so. From here, you may have seen this before on arrays. You can have a make array node. We can also have a make map node. And that is what we're going to use because it's fairly easy to just put all our buttons in there. So make map comes out. And this is now going to be the start of our key value map. Before, we've made that in the right hand side here on the Cinti character, on our actual character, third person character, where we had this little sidebar in which we could create those values. And now we're using a slightly different approach because we have these buttons all here in the sidebar. So it's actually really easy for us to drag them over and hook them up to the value, because these are button values. So I can just go drag over and then say, hey, this is a button. Now I just need to figure out what is the key for that button, and then, things will work just fine. I can also go add a pin. In fact, we need quite a few pins. I'll just hook up the first two buttons and then I'll show you what we're doing here. Just drag that on there, and then Unreal Engine will make that little connection here all by itself. So we'll have to get as many pins as we have characters here, so as many buttons that we have here. But the key, what is the key? Well, the key is, let me go back into my content browser, into the Polygon City folder, into meshes, into characters. It is this string, the name of the skeletal mesh that we're going to extract from that. So since this is my first character, I'm going to go press F2 and hit Control A, Control C, and escape, so that I've copied the whole name there. And that is, whoops, in the character selection, that is my first key. Because this is essentially the skeletal mesh name of the object that is associated with the guy that gets called when button number 1 is pressed, if that makes sense. And I'm doing that so that on the Cinti character, I can now go and ask, instead of this, I can ask, what skeletal mesh are we using? Let me just show you how we're going to hook this up on the actual character where we apply the focus. Like right now, we're always applying focus to the first button, but let's not do that. Let's hook it up so that it'll make a little bit more sense then. So I'll go grab a reference to my mesh. From it, just move that over here. From it, I'm going to go and get the skeletal mesh. There it is, this guy. From it, I can go and get a display name, which will then return a string to the one that we can put into the mesh map we're building. So get display name, there it is. I might just go and stack these guys like I did before. This is now string, and from the selection menu, I can grab my mesh map, get mesh map, that's my complicated variable that I'm building there. And from it, I can drag out a find node, find a value on it. And the value is, of course, the thing that comes in here from my current mesh. And I'm saying, hey, is there an equivalent button value that we can find that matches this string value? And if there is, put it in here and apply focus onto that object. I hope this makes sense. So we've gone through this before, but yeah, we're essentially taking our current mesh, looking at the skeletal mesh that we're wearing, that we've selected with a button, or that is currently selected. We're getting its display name. We're using a find node to translate that into a button object. And there's really nothing to see there yet because we need to finish with the mesh map first, and then we're also going to need to build that functionality that actually highlights the button physically. That isn't quite happening. But let's finish with carry on making that mesh map here with there's 2 characters, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's going to be fairly simple. So 3 goes into value 2, 4 goes into value 3. I always like doing that. 5 goes into value 4. 6 goes into value 5, 7 into value 6, 8 into value 7, 9 into value 8. Got the first 2 already. Let's go and pick the others. This one is now businesswoman. Whose coat is this jacket? That's what the Welsh guys say. Somebody on a stream the other day thought I was Welsh. That is cool. I don't think I've ever got that. Are you Welsh? Very cool. And there's character male police. That is literally a mesh map created. We can just add that to the event graph here, grab a reference to our character, and just call that function up here so that this variable is actually being built, because we've wrapped it in a function. We need to call that function. So that was create mesh map. There we go. We can also go comment that so that I remember what this is 2 weeks from now. Initialize mesh map. That is what happens there. And that is now technically the functionality done, but we're not going to have any button highlights just yet because we haven't hooked up a logic for that. Let's just see if it works in principle and see if there's a string that comes out of this. So we go print string. That's not going to look great, but we'll just go add it to the back just so that we can see the value of the string that comes out of it. Let's see if that works. Can we compile? Yes, we can compile. That's good. Turn this into full screen. So this is only called when I bring up my menu. There we go. It is actually SK character businesswoman. Did you see that? I'm going to go select another character like this guy, and I'll bring up the menu again. And we're seeing SK character businessman suit. That's perfect. Let's pick a female police officer here. Bring up the menu again, and yes, there we go. So it is actually working. This is the thing I'm looking for. Whenever I bring up the menu, this thing in the top left corner that brings up the currently selected mesh, SK male police officer. Male jacket, that's correct. This guy is now male hoodie, that's perfect. So it looks like it's working in principle. That's very nice. So all we need to do now is build a mechanic that when we open this menu up, that this text value from the top corner there is being translated into actually highlighting a button. Because currently the button might have focus, but we don't actually get to see that yet. So we need to create a little event that highlights the background of these characters here. Let's make that happen. This is functionality we'll also build into the selection menu, and we'll need one more variable that I have not told you about, and that is just a regular array of buttons. So we're going to go and attach that to the create mesh map variable. So we can just go back to this, and from our mesh map variable, there's some other funky nodes there. We've seen how to use the find node on that map variable. There's one that gives us literally all the values. There's also one that gives us all the keys, but we're interested in literally an array of all these things, because in a moment we'll create a for each loop and go through every button and say, do you have focus? If yes, then have a different background color. If no, well, go back to your ordinary self. So we need an array that we can query for that. And luckily there is a thing that's called values, which happens to give us an array from a map variable. This is now the array. We can go and add that, promote that to a variable, and just call that one all buttons. There. That is being set with this logic, so we don't have to worry about it anymore. And we can go back to the regular event graph. Actually, no, let's make ourselves another event graph, because this is a bit of a big function that is happening next. So let's go and make that happen over here. New event graph. So it's basically another page in this whole thing. And we're going to call that one button focus. Let's use event construct for this. And on it, we're going to go and set timer by event. It's going to be a looping event. We could hook this up to the event tick, but that's going to be overkill. That'd be like on every frame, every button is queried all the time. That's just going to be overkill. So we're going to just go do this every 0.1 second, and it'll be a looping event. So this is happening continuously. So that means when we change a button, when we change button focus, a different button can then be highlit every 0.1 seconds. I'll make that an event. I'll make a custom event out of that, and I'm going to call it, I'm going to call it focus. And that will now go through our button array, which is here, all buttons. So let's grab a reference out from that, and this is going to be a loop. So for each loop that takes an array as its input, like so. And that now asks literally every button, hey, do you have keyboard focus? If so, go and set your background color to something. So let's go make a branch here. And the condition we want to query is the array element here, first of all, has keyboard focus. That's a nice Boolean. If you do, it doesn't come up with the context sensitive thing. It's basically the same element here. That then needs to be set keyboard focus. Sorry, it's not actually keyboard focus. What am I talking about? It's the background color. Duh. Set the background color at that point to color A. We'll make it up in a moment. And at the bottom here, it's the same thing. Grabbing this out again. Set background color to something unhighlit on the false branch. Let's make that look prettier, like so, and like so. Hey, that looks nice. So the background color for our highlight, we can give that a color, and I'll say, let's make that, I don't know, something colorful, but also not something, terrible. Maybe something like a reddish thing. There we go. That could be that. And the unlit, the unhighlit color, we could technically copy that directly from the designer and take the exact same value that we currently have on the button, which is currently invisible. So let's go and crank up our animation so that we can see that value here. So we're just using 0.1 3 times and 0.6 for that. and 0.6. So that's exactly the same value that I had given it already. So there's no change there. Okay, that should be that. If we're super lucky, does it compile? It compiles. That's good. How about the character? Does he compile? He's already done here. That's nice. Let's just try it out. I'm not entirely sure if I've done everything correctly. It's a bit of a difficult one. Yes, look at that. Oh my goodness. I'm always so surprised when things happen on the first go without any additional action there. So this is exactly what I was expecting. The businesswoman is our current character. When we bring up the menu, she is pre-highlight. Then when we go and select a different character, no matter which one that is, maybe policewoman in policewoman outfit, the moment I bring up the menu, she should be highlight, and that is the case. That is very exciting. Oh my goodness. I love it when that happens. Let's test this with everyone. He's highlight. How about he? He's highlight. Yes. So just to reiterate, what we want is the character that is currently selected to be highlight the moment we open the menu. And if pink is maybe not your color, we can always go change that to something else. Perhaps, it is actually not my color either. Let's go and change that to something like green or blue. Yeah, that's nice. That might be nice. Does it work? Yes, it works. So, personal preference, whatever your background color preference is. But yeah, look at that. It works. And we can see that tiny delay there. So it doesn't actually happen immediately as I bring up the menu. There's this tiny delay. But yeah, it does work in principle. So that's totally awesome. And more to the point, it works with the gamepad and the keyboard and mouse. So I can go and change that to something else now. And that is just so cool. Change her skin color, change her outfit as I walk around. Super exciting. And go, and she's pre-highlight. Pre-highlight now. That's a good word, isn't it? The pre-highlight things. Great. Now the only thing to just add that little bit of extra embellishment, as they say, after so much success, I must say, the only other thing I'd like to do while we're dealing with the keyboard and the mouse thing, and I might do that in the next episode, is first of all take that text node away that gives us that little debug message in the top right corner there of the pre-highlight character. Oops, I haven't actually selected anybody. This is also a good test here. Look, she's selected as I bring up the menu, but if I select someone else without actually selecting the character and just dismiss the menu, bring up the menu again, the correct character is highlight. And now if I bring it up, then she's highlight, and so forth. Yeah, so I'd like to change that message at the bottom here. I'll do that in the next video. Depending if we're using a gamepad, it'll display how to bring up different skin tones and outfits on the gamepad. And I would also like to, at that point, not see the mouse cursor. Currently, I'm seeing the little white arrow there. And I like for that to not happen when we're using a gamepad. It's going to be exciting. It's been good, my friends. Let's meet again in the next episode and see if we can finish off this project.